This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. At the end of the day, I'm just a bloke with a chest freezer in his backyard, and before undertaking anything such as an ice bath, you should consult your health professionals and do your own research. Now, time for the show. G'day legends, I'm Trav Dittmar and welcome to this episode of the Cold Exposure Hot Topics podcast. I'm here today with Karli Whitwell. Karli, how you going?
Hi, I'm really good.
Yes.
How are you?
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, so you've just been in the ice bath and a few minutes out of it now. How'd you go? How you feeling?
Good, my legs are still cold.
Are they?
Yeah, but like in a nice way.
Yeah.
I feel very refreshed, energised and icy.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We really like that energy boost in the middle of the day when we're about to pick up our child as well.
I know, I need it. You'll learn all about that.
Oh yeah, 6 months away.
Yeah.
So, yeah, fantastic. So you've been doing ice bars a little bit throughout, down at Henley Beach and whatnot, and that's sort of how we met probably a couple of years ago now.
Yeah,
So
getting close to that.
it would be, yeah. So tell us a bit about yourself anyway.
Oh, that's always such a big question. I always sort of think, like, what do people want to know about me? Okay, well, I'm a mum. I always lead with that because my daughter's a very big part of my life. So I have a 5-year-old daughter. I said 4. 5-year-old little girl, and she's like my biggest mirror, my biggest gift, my biggest challenge. And becoming a mum was one of those moments where I was like, whew. That really cracked me open in all the ways that I didn't expect. But yes, I'm a mum. I'm a coach and mentor. I run a business, and I'm really passionate about helping coaches create their offers, their coaching programs, and then get out there and sell them.
Yeah.
So we do all things, strategy, energetics, mindset, everything, confidence, all of that kind of stuff. So that's my real passion, I guess. Like, I feel very lucky that every day I get to do the things that I love. Other than that, I'm a bit of an ice bath junkie. I love the beach. I love my friends, and I'm an Aries.
Aries,
in case that's important.
I'm a Virgo. I haven't delved into star signs too much, so I don't know whether I'm a good or a bad person because of that. But
We'll talk about that later.
all right, yeah, I might be in a bit of strife here. Fantastic. So, so you got a little girl who's 5 years old. Hopefully she didn't hear you stuff up before. Or she might get in a bit of trouble with that.
Little sassy pants.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much.
So, yeah, obviously that would have been one of the most, if not the most life-changing moment of your life. Talk to us a bit about what that journey was like becoming a mum, from, realising that you were going to become a mum to, the actual practicality of it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, it's funny, when I was younger, like I'd say probably late teens, early 20s, I was like, no, I don't want to have children. And I don't know why. Maybe we just go through those phases. So I can't say that I'm one of those people who was always like, oh, I'm always, knew that I was going to be a mum, because I didn't. But, over the years, I sort of thought, I saw friends having kids, and you'd think that would put me off, but it didn't. It, made me sort of think like, oh, well, maybe, there's this other kind of love. Do you know what I mean? That I would really love to experience. And so met my now ex-husband, when I was probably in my early 30s. And then, we got married and decided, let's do the baby thing. And, they say, like, nothing can prepare you for becoming a parent.
Yeah. Nothing
can prepare you for becoming a parent. But it is, it was the most rewarding. Well, it is the most rewarding experience. It's still happening. But, in that moment where it was like, oh my gosh, I've got this now baby in my arms, like in this kind of, I guess, drug-fueled state, because, I had like an epidural and stuff during the birth, but I was just sort of like, what? Like, okay, now what? Like, now what do I do? I'd spent... Yeah, like,
where's the instruction manual? And
and it's really funny because I'd spent all this time sort of like diving into what the birth was going to be like, which was nothing like I expected or planned or hoped for anyway. But I put so much energy and attention into that, and then I was like, okay, now what do I do? Like, you're handing me this baby. So she came from me, but you're handing this baby to me, and I don't know what to do next.
Yeah.
So it's very overwhelming in that respect. But we found our way, as you do. and there were a lot of sleepless nights. I'm going to be careful what I say. I know you're like...
I've got the full picture of everyone.
You have?
Sort of
okay.
Good and bad. So I'm
Take that and times it by... no. No, and it was just like, you know, it's really funny because I really lost myself.
Yeah.
You know, and you probably hear people say that a lot. And it's quite common, I guess, for women to sort of feel like, oh, wow, who am I now that I have this child? And I didn't realize it was happening at the time, but I, you know, started distancing myself from the things that I used to love doing and the people I loved hanging out with. And I just sort of thought like, you know, now this is my job. Like I have a baby now and I will probably go back to work after I have my baby. I'll go back part-time. I'd had dreams of starting a business before that, but I just didn't think it was going to be possible.
Yeah.
Which is the weirdest thing. And then, maybe we'll venture off here as well, then when Layla was about 6 months old, I met these women who were in like network marketing businesses. And even though that's not necessarily my thing, what that showed me was that like these women who are mums, they've got kids around my age or a little bit older, they're out there killing it. They're living lives in the way they want to live their life. They're doing things they want to do. They're having a major impact on people. So maybe I could do something like that.
Yeah.
Too, you know, I didn't know what it looked like, but it kind of just opened my eyes. Do you know what I mean? Like I went from this, like having my baby and feeling so lost and like, you know, this is all I do now. Like I'm a mum and I'm a wife and that's my life, to then feeling really inspired.
Yeah.
You know, and feeling like there was so much more out there.
Yeah. So what I'm getting there is, you know, when, you know, Bubs came, it was very much you've parceled yourself into this identity. You know, it's like, yes, I'm mum, I'm a wife, and that's it. Like it wasn't just a part of the bigger Karli Whitwell picture. It was, you know, this is my identity as a whole. And so, you know, like you say, you broke out of that when you started interacting with these mums who were doing network marketing and stuff. And obviously you haven't turned back. Well, I certainly don't seem to think you have.
No.
You know, so once you got into that environment, you know, obviously it's a new thing. With network marketing, I've done it as well. You sort of go, is it legit? Am I in the right spot?
Yeah.
What was it then, once you got yourself into that network, that really accelerated you forward?
I don't even know if it was that, to be honest. I tried a couple of businesses in that and I was just like, this just doesn't feel like me. But what that did was, because, you know, when you join those businesses, like you're exposed to people who are like killing it. They're doing amazing things, right? And then you get to, you know, be part of a lot of trainings and workshops and that sort of thing. So it just led me to kind of believe like, okay, maybe there is something else out there. Do you know what I mean? So it kind of like accelerated me in that respect to start just looking a little bit more broadly. You know, take the blinkers off and start seeing what else is around you and what else is possible. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so when you went into, like, came out of that with that perspective, did you hit the ground running with something straight away? Or
no.
Did you sort of,
Oh, look, maybe I did, I guess. Like, and with that phase that I was in life, you know, I had by the time I probably started the coaching side of things, Layla was about 1 or almost 1, right? So it's about 4 years ago, 4 and a bit years ago. And I was like, I'd always wanted to be a coach, right? So when I was, before I found out I was pregnant and I was working in my corporate job, I wanted to do some sort of coaching in my own business. Yeah. Because I'd been doing it for years in the corporate space. Coaching, training, I was national trainer, sales trainer in a finance company, right? And so I had all this experience and I loved that, what is it, like that rewarding feeling when you see somebody where they start and you get to play a part in where they're going. And I just felt so rewarded. But the corporate jam was not my thing. So it was kind of like, oh, maybe I'll start something. Anyway, so then when I had Layla, or I found out I got pregnant, I was like, that's never going to happen. I'm not going to have time to do it, you know, so I kind of discounted it. And I've totally forgotten where I'm going with this story. What was the question you asked?
So whether you, like, once you've been in that environment, whether you hit the ground
running, yeah. So not really. So I guess being a new mum, I was kind of like, maybe I can help new mums, you know, with like, you know, feeling worthy and, you know, finding their passions and that kind of thing. So I just sort of started doing that. But it wasn't until probably, if I get my years right, probably like the end of 2020 or 2021, and a mentor of mine from my old work, she is like an NLP trainer, And so I'd been watching her for many years and how she changed her life. And I was like, I've got to go do her course. I've got to go and become an NLP practitioner. So I went and did NLP practitioner, which then spurred me on to really find direction in my business. And it has evolved over time, but, you know, back then it was more around like confidence and, you know, like tapping into your more authentic self, because that was the journey that I'd been on in that past year leading up. And then I did NLP master practitioner straight after, and hypnotherapy and all of that sort of stuff. So I did that. And I guess, yeah, it was more so working with people around confidence, you know, finding themselves and like having the courage to do the things you really want to do.
And it was a big time period for that as well, wasn't it? Because it's around 2020, 2021, isn't it?
Yeah,
we're going through COVID and everyone's been at home and restricted or had that quarter life, midlife, what am I doing with my life sort of thing. Yeah. So I can imagine that would have been quite a big business for you, really.
Well, it could have been, but I also at that point didn't really know what I was doing strategically.
Yeah.
Right. So I had the energetics and the mindset down pat, but I didn't really know what I was doing strategically. So I had to. I know it's really interesting. I had to get comfortable with implementing strategy in my business, because that was something I wasn't comfortable with at the beginning, because I just didn't understand, right? You know,
it makes it real as well, doesn't it, in a bigger way?
Exactly. Yeah. So, like, what's underneath that, Karli? You know, why are we sabotaging? But yeah, you know, so I had to then, like, I had to find some support with, like, how to, you know, implement the strategy and all of that sort of stuff. But, so yeah, to answer your question, no, I didn't really hit the ground running straight away. It took me, you know, there were a few twists and turns, and then there was a pause when my ex-husband and I separated and we had been traveling. So I'd taken probably nearly a year pause in the business. So it was like, a few twists and turns, but...
Yeah, it's never linear, isn't it?
Never linear.
They say, well, Mike Tyson says, you know, everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face. And
do you know what I mean? Exactly.
It's similar to what you're saying, even with your birth story before, in a way. It's like, you can plan all this all you want, but good on you.
Exactly. I know. Yeah. And now what? Yeah.
Yeah. But it certainly sounds like, you know, you touched on confidence a few times throughout that. And look, it's such a big topic, isn't it? When, you know, you look at, okay, I'm confident, but I'm confident in certain ways, or am I confident holistically, or, you know, am I confident because I'm my authentic self? And I think they're completely different, but they all intertwine in a way as well.
Totally.
And you mentioned a bit about your, you know, getting to that authentic state yourself. And what did you find out about yourself when you were going through that and building your confidence in Karli, really?
I found out that I had been living a life that was not true to me.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to actually make any changes, or make big, meaningful changes to it. But I did. I found out that it's like, you know, you go through life and it's like, they tell you that the path's going to be linear, right? You know, linear. You go to school, you go to uni or whatever you do. Then you go and you find a partner, and then you buy a house and you get married, and then you go and have a child, and then rinse and repeat, right? That's like the societal kind of norm, isn't it?
Yeah, it's what all our parents did, and
Exactly. And so it's kind of like we're programmed, I guess, you know, depending on your upbringing, but it's like that's the way you do things. Like that's just the normal way. You have a secure job, you know, you find a partner, and once you've found them and you're married, you stay with them. That's just what you do, right? And so then I started to sort of think like, oh, I'm having these like, I'm feeling a little bit triggered here. What's actually happening? And I realised that I'd been living this very good on paper life. So it's like ticking the boxes on a piece of paper, but in here there was something missing, and I didn't really know what it was. I couldn't put my finger on it. So I learned that, and then I guess this leads to what I did about that. Which was, I said to my husband, I think it would be a great idea for us to sell our house and buy a caravan, because I was feeling so unfulfilled. I guess. And it's like I didn't realize it at the time, but I was trying to kind of like run away from this life that I'd created, but I didn't realize that like I had to make the changes within myself first. So we did that. We traveled Australia for about a year. But 6 of those months we were actually separated. So we were separated on the road.
How did that play out? Surely I could imagine if I was in that situation, I'd be like beeline home, maybe the other person's coming with me, maybe they're not.
Yeah, look, and it's so interesting that you say that. I mean, now I think about it, it's probably 4 months of that time that we were separated for. But yeah, you know, we were in Byron Bay, which had always been my dream to, you know, land in Byron some way, somehow. And we spent 9 months there in total. But yeah, it got to like, it was 2022 February, so it's almost 2 years ago. No, 23, sorry.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's almost 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I just realised, I was like, wow, you know, I'm running away, like hasn't helped things. And in hindsight, all we were trying to do was we're trying to fix the marriage by putting a Band-Aid on it. You know what I mean? And so we both came to the conclusion that, you know, separating would be the best thing. But logistically, how do we do that?
Yeah.
We're 2,000 kilometres away from our support network. We'd sold our house. Everything we own is in this caravan. And we have a child.
Yeah.
And a dog. So, you know, there were complexities, right? So
Well, separating wasn't part of the plan, was it?
if you want to know how to make a plan and then have everything else happen, like, go to me. No. But I think being able to adapt and, you know, because at the end of the day, we are going to make plans. Like, you're going to make plans and it's not always going to go the way that you hope or the way that you think or the way that you want it to go, right? So how can you then adapt and how can you then keep moving anyway? I think that's something that I've actually got really good at over the years.
Yeah.
But anyway, ultimately, you know, we were sort of like, one person would stay in the caravan and the other would go into like a cabin or something, and we'd just be like chopping and changing, and we did that for about 4 months. And then I'm like, what are we doing? Are we going to stay in Byron and actually maybe try and find houses, or are we just going to go back to Adelaide? So we came back to Adelaide, and we've both now started our lives all over again. I have never been happier.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like I needed to make those plans and have those plans kind of pulled out from underneath me.
To go now what?
To go now what, which has then led me to find out more about myself and to reflect on, you know, patterns over the years and, you know, where I've, I guess, settled, and for things that I haven't been entirely 100%, you know, on board or happy with, but I've done them because it's just what you do.
Yeah. Just acting out of, not necessarily autopilot, because you've got the awareness around it, but it's just that sense of duty or obligation to what's perceived as what you should be doing.
Yeah, well, there was definitely that big piece, like the societal, you know, programs. It's like you just go and do that because it's normal, Karli, and if you do something outside of that, you know, am I going to be accepted? Am I going to be judged? Right? Yeah, exactly. Then my brother got divorced, so I kind of felt that gave me permission to
I think we touched on this when we first met. I knew Sam.
Oh, that's right.
Briefly through a religious camp I did when I was like 15 or 16, and he was big into that as well.
He was, he was.
We all go through these iterations, don't we?
He's went for a bit longer maybe than yours, but I think he's out of that world now. But
yeah, I think my Christianity phase was very quickly preceded by my drinking and weed phase. So.
As it often is for a lot of people.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a tangent we could go down.
Yeah, we could. Wow. Maybe for another time.
Yeah, maybe. So now getting back to you know, you finding yourself in your authenticity and stuff, like obviously there's a lot of moving parts here, and you know, we did just touch on what the situation was like when you were travelling with your husband. Well, now ex-husband obviously, but what was that dynamic like, you know, when things were better, say, when you were trying to find yourself, and how did that play out?
When I was in the marriage or after?
Yeah, within the marriage,
okay.
And you know, like obviously going forward it's been a bit different because it has been pressure. But what did that look like in the relationship? Yeah.
So I think for me the key was actually starting to find the things that I enjoy doing again and starting to do those.
Yeah.
You know, it might sound super simple, but like, you know, as I said, because I felt like I'd sort of lost myself, you know, through becoming a mum, and you know, it does take a while to sort of get back because you've got all these feelings of guilt, and if I take care of myself and do things that are good for me, am I going to be a good enough parent? Whereas when we take care of ourselves, we can actually be a way better parent.
Yeah.
You know, but I was in the moment feeling all of these sort of feelings of guilt, and you know, the things that I used to do, like in that marriage, was I would try and be as upfront as I could about what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, one of the things that I used to do quite a bit, maybe every 6 months or so, was like have just a weekend away for myself.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the best things that I possibly could have done, because it just gave me space to just be by myself. And I would just go down to the beach and get an Airbnb, 1 or 2 nights max, and just be me.
Yeah.
Read books, like sleep in, you know, but just start to, you know, do a little bit more journaling and kind of like going within and starting to try and understand, what does Karli really want? You know? So I'd probably say that's probably the most constructive that I could share, because while I was in the marriage, I probably didn't do the best job at like really communicating what I needed. You know what I mean? So I would sort of try to, but I always sort of felt like, oh, don't worry about it, like, because I had these guilt feelings.
Yeah.
So I had to work through a lot of that, which I did after the fact.
Yeah.
And so just kind of get okay with, like, it's okay for me to ask for my needs and to say what I want. Because in hindsight, I didn't do that enough in my marriage.
And it's something that you hear a lot with mums and things as well, where it's like, you know, obviously we're moving away, we've moved well and truly away from the trad life stuff. I mean, people still get involved in that kind of thing, good on them, but like the traditional previous role of a wife and then the role of a mum as well is give, and like it's not normal for women to advocate for their own needs and what they actually want. Like
exactly, and that's been a work in progress for me. Like, and you know, really interesting. Like you sort of talk about, I sort of reflect on like, oh, I've done so much work on myself, which is amazing. But what will be really interesting is when I do get into another relationship, right? Because then I am sure like it'll highlight those areas that I've still got more to do, and where, you know, where am I actually not completely comfortable with communicating what I need and that sort of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Like there'll be those trigger moments that come up, and it's like, you know, this is nothing to do with this person, but then it's behaving in a way unconsciously, and it's like, oh, hang on a minute.
It's having that awareness though, I think, which is the key, and that's something that I didn't have back then. So I feel excited by that. Yeah,
it's not like you have to be a separate person to be in a relationship versus, you know, from the roles that you play sort of thing. It's all encompassing, isn't it?
Exactly. And I also feel like it's not like you need to ever be completely healed, because what is healed, right? And you know,
healed until tomorrow,
until I wake up, right? But it's like there's always like work we can be doing on ourselves, and you know, if we want to grow and we want to evolve, we want to get to the next level, whatever that looks like in your life, there's always work to be done. And I think embracing that and being okay with that is so key.
Yeah, spot on. And some things you can do within a relationship, and others take relationships ending to bring to the fore.
Spot on, yeah.
So now going down that tangent a bit and take this wherever you want, but like, you know, what have you learned from your previous marriage that now you take into, or you would take into any future relationship? And like, I know we have touched briefly a little bit in the off air on DV and stuff like that, but you know, factor that in if you like, but yeah, the floor's yours on that.
I want to make it super clear there was no DV in my marriage. Just so no one gets confused. Like, I had a boyfriend in the past and had a DV experience. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, we can go into that if you want to. Yeah.
Do you? Alright, well, let's talk about what I learned in my marriage first, because you know, like, I think the main thing that I, upon reflection, when I look back on how I showed up in my marriage, I was in a very masculine energy. Very masculine energy.
So what does that mean?
And so I guess when I look back on my marriage now, it's kind of like I can see really where I wore the pants and where I was in, you know, a very masculine energy of like doing all the time and feeling like I had to be on all the time, making decisions, you know, making the plans. Like, even when we were traveling, I was always the one who was looking at the maps and going, okay, so if we go from here, we can get to this next spot in 3 hours. We've got to have a quick break for Layla and the dog to get out and stretch their legs. And then we'll stay there, and we'll stay there for 4 nights, and then we'll move on. And my husband would just be like, yeah, no worries. Okay, cool. So, and I didn't realize how draining on my energy that was, because naturally as a woman, that's probably not meant to be my dominant energy, right? And my ex-husband was a lot more in his feminine, very sort of passive and like go with the flow and that sort of thing. So for me, going into another relationship is going to be really important that those roles are reversed.
Yeah, and I think it's not even necessarily about reversing, but balancing out a bit
Balancing,
more.
yeah, that's actually the word I would use.
You know,
Yeah,
'cause
exactly.
certainly, like, there's nothing wrong with being the person that goes, "Oh, I want to go here on my holiday," or that sort of thing. Nothing wrong with that at all.
No.
But it's, you know, like when you find that happy medium of, right, I, as a man, want to be in my masculine and healthy way and allow, well, you know, we hold space for each other where, you know, I can be in that, you can be in your healthy feminine and so on.
Yeah, and I didn't understand any of that language back then. So if you'd said healthy feminine, I would have been like, what does that mean? Like, you know, so I didn't understand what that meant, and I didn't know why I always felt so drained and so, you know, like there was just no polarity, right? And I didn't understand that at the time. So for me, a big thing is now I do understand a little bit more what feels naturally good for me, you know, is to then hopefully attract a partner who's in more his healthy masculine, and then we complement each other really well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's beautiful. And I think, you know, we all strive for that, and sometimes, and when you have awareness around it, it's actually really funny to notice in a relationship as well.
Absolutely, yeah. It's interesting, like looking from the outside into another relationship, do you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Or even like, you know, I look at my marriage with him, and I'm going to be real careful what I say. and this might be the pregnancy stuff as well, but like, you know, she's lately been a lot more, I guess, in a bit of a masculine energy where it comes to like what she wants and, you know, what boundaries she sets with people and stuff as well. But then there's the beautiful, like the feminine nature that's, you know, the divine mother, and she's, you know, creating a life, and she still needs the cuddles and the safety, that feeling from me as well. So
totally.
it's just amazing, when you are aware of it, you can see the dynamics at play. And I mean, like my feminine comes out because I like to be the little spoon. I'll publicly admit that. I got no shame, little spoon all the way.
But this is the thing, right? We're all meant to have both the masculine and the feminine, right? But it's fine. It's like the yin and the yang, isn't it? And I always like, you know, see that image of the yin and the yang. You're always going to have both, but it's like, what's the more dominant energy that you're actually in?
Absolutely, it's really fascinating.
It really is, isn't it?
And so, you know, obviously we've touched on finding yourself and getting very clear on where you are, what you want out of, you know, life, relationships, that kind of thing. What's, for your business this year in particular, what's the main focus, having factored in all of the growth you've done in other areas?
So the business this year, I see 2024 last year being a year where, you know, we started to lay foundations. And so I started to create more clarity around what I wanted to do, how I wanted to show up in the business, and you know, what I actually wanted to create. Because probably the year before that was when we're on the road, so I had a big pause, but then before that it was all just up and down all over the place, and there was no sort of real rhyme or reason. And I don't know if you know much about human design, but I'm a manifesting generator, which means I love shiny objects. And so for me, I guess it's about, rather than kind of chopping and changing to the next new shiny object, it's like, okay, how can we create consistency in what I'm offering? Because I love the work that I'm doing right now. But it's now about, you know, getting creative with the different ways that I get to share that work and get to then show up in my coaching containers and the different people that get to come into the world and that sort of thing. So I see this year as being like last year was sort of a laying the foundations sort of year. This is a year of building and growth. So I'm getting into a bit more of the masculine energy in my business now as well, because, you know, we're implementing a little bit more strategy, a little bit differently, but I also get to balance that with the feminine and, you know, the energetics and that side of things. So it's been powerful for me to kind of understand that, how that plays out in business too.
It's fascinating. It's, you know, having it is that masculine, you know, typical masculine warrior mindset of let's smash out this business, let's do it. But you've got that awareness where you can actually come back to the femininity, that sort of thing as well.
And the balance is key. I've found.
Because, you know, I think one of the ways I tend to associate masculine versus feminine energy is, you know, the masculine can be more of that action taking at times, whereas if the feminine can be more of that abundance and receptive and taking things around them in and, you know,
flow and
And I think that's going to be, you know, if and when the next relationship does come around, like especially if you have that masculine energy around the drive in your business, being able to step into that feminine when you step away from the laptop or
absolutely, yeah, absolutely, and that's something that's really been in my awareness probably the past year since I've started, you know, being a bit more strategic and that sort of thing. It's like, okay, now I actually even understand this a little bit more now, which, you know, I didn't for a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, what do I need to do then? Like, if I have, you know, been feeling particularly more in that masculine energy in my business, how, like, what are the things I then do to bring myself back into that feminine flow and that sort of, you know, receptivity and that sort of thing?
Yeah. So what are those sort of things that you do to ground yourself into that? And, you know, obviously community can be a big part of that as well. But touch on that a little bit.
Such a big part. But look, for me, what I find is if I just go down to the beach, put my feet in the water or sit on the sand or something, I just find that just brings me back so fast. A few deep breaths and just, I don't know, you know, the other things that I love to do, I love sketching and painting.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I will do those sometimes at night. So if I've had a, you know, particularly like, you know, big day in the business, I'll sit down, I might even have a glass of wine and I just sketch some spicy pictures or just do like a little bit of like watercolours or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, and it feels really good because I'm like back in that heart space, you know, rather than in here.
Yeah, and it's just that creative flow, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So finding something that you can allow that creativity to sort of come through.
Yeah.
It's been huge.
Yeah, beautiful. And you know, that obviously plays into like a bit of a therapeutic thing as well. And
so much so.
Yeah, like not necessarily escapism, but distractions when, you know, you are going through that healing process and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And,
yeah.
I did actually want to ask a bit about that healing journey that you have been on as well. Like, I mean, obviously, like we say, it's never finished. It's not linear. It's all over the place, and you know, all in different seasons at different times. But you know, maybe delve into that a little bit and provide some, you know, whether you've had some cool experiences, retreats, that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, you know, I actually ran 2 retreats as well. What year was that? Gosh, maybe that was 2021, 22. Anyway, yeah, that was a lot of fun. I had a business partner and we did 2 retreats together, which were beautiful. It was so nice. I've not actually been on a retreat myself.
Okay.
But I think the biggest things that I've done from a healing perspective, I tend to find conversation very healing. And conversation with community, like-minded people. Saturday mornings have probably been the most healing thing for me, particularly in terms of healing my relationships with the feminine and with my sisters, right? Like, you know, collective women. And I think for many years, like, I'd been in friendships that, you know, you're in groups and people are talking about others and they're gossiping and it just always made me feel really tight in the chest and never resonated with me. But I just thought that that's what happened, right? Yeah. And so then I'd start getting these feelings of like, oh my gosh, you know, maybe they don't like me, or, you know, am I good enough to be friends with these people, right?
It's like if they're bitching about other people when I'm not here, they're probably doing the same thing.
100%, right? And I just thought that that's what women did. And so then when I came into our Saturday community and I met the most incredible women, and I started to realise, like, I feel emotional about this because it's changed my life so much.
Yeah.
I realised how powerful and supportive women actually are and can be when you're around the right women. And for me, that's been a very healing experience.
Yeah.
You know, because I just got goosebumps. I just went away for a weekend.
It's real.
It does, yeah. I just went away for a weekend with some of the girls, and not once did I ever think, oh, I'm feeling left out, or maybe they're talking about me when I'm in bed or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It was just that genuinely beautiful connection, and I feel so grateful for that every single day. Yeah. I just feel so grateful for that. And then the men, right?
Yeah, they play in as well?
You guys are okay.
Yeah? Oh, that's good.
They're all right. But so then if we go back to... I had a DV experience, right? Where I was in a relationship for 5, nearly 6 years. And 5 of those years were very violent, very volatile. very scary,
Yeah.
years. And not all men are like that. And I know that, okay? But, you know, having an experience like that, I started to feel, I guess, quite vulnerable, or, you know, you start to sort of focus on those aspects of men, all right? Which is shit. Like, it's a horrible thing. And I met my husband, which he's a lovely man, and still to this day, I think he's the most lovely man, and that was very healing for me too.
Yeah.
However, then meeting all of you wonderful men who are part of our community and witnessing how you show up in your lives for yourselves, for your families, for your partners, for your friends, you know, has just shown me the divine masculine.
Yeah.
Right? But it's just shown me the type of men that are out there. And it's made me feel so much safer. And like it's safe to trust men, if that makes sense. I don't want to say that I went through a period where I didn't trust men, but, you know, it did feel kind of hard for a little while and a little bit scary.
Yeah. Yeah, as it would, you know, and I'm really, really glad that, you know, coming into the community that we are a part of, that you've been able to heal that perspective and that men have been able to show up in that way.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's really powerful, especially, you know, there is so much rhetoric around DV and whatnot these days, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
And so I suppose we can go down this tangent a little bit if you want to.
Yeah, I don't mind.
We don't need to go down like specifics of incidents necessarily if you don't want to, but what I'm actually interested in is the behaviours, because, you know, we hear so often like he was great at the start, you know, and then all of this stuff started happening, and it's not necessarily the physical stuff, it's the manipulation and whatnot. So if you could talk to us a little bit about your journey through that, and by no means if you don't want to share stuff, don't feel like you have to.
No, of course, I'm an open book, as I said, so and if you have questions, feel free to ask. But you know, what was I was probably 24, I think. I was a lot younger when I got into that relationship. And I know it's really interesting. A lot of people say he was great at the start. He wasn't. And I just it was like I had zero, I don't know, I didn't have any worth. Like, I did not know who I was, right? So early 20s, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, you know, in this kind of group of friends where everything's like cliquey and a bit bitchy, and, you know, it's just, I don't know, it was a really strange phase of my life. And so I met this guy, and he didn't once pretend that he was anything that he wasn't. Which is really interesting when I look back on it. You know, we would go for like weeks in a relationship, and then he wouldn't call me, or he wouldn't like respond to a text, and then all of a sudden, because I was still living with my parents at the time, he'd rock up out the front and expect me to go and get in his car and go wherever he wanted to go, right? And I did it. So, you know, you kind of, it's really interesting to look back on that, because there was not this kind of like false bravado of like, you know, he's an absolutely incredible person and then he changed. It was just like, he was this guy, and I didn't realize that I was worthy of a lot more. And then over time, things started to, you know, progressively get worse. So it was about a year in, and I remember the first like incident, I guess, a year in, and we had an argument. He just pushed me against the wall. And that was all that happened. And then he told me to leave. He said, go, like, don't come back here ever again. Like, I don't love you anymore, just leave. And of course I was like, I know you didn't mean it. Like, don't worry about it. It's okay. Because I was really afraid of losing him. And so that stuff, you know, it got progressively worse over the years. And then it got to the point where I finally left, not because I wanted to, but well, no, that's not true, because I did want to. There was a part of me that wanted to, but there was also a part of me that was afraid to leave, because I was like, you know the movie Sliding Doors? Have you ever seen that? Yeah. So there's one door you can go through, and then, you know, changes your life. Then you go through the other door, and that's a whole different life, right? It was like I had these two doors to choose from, whereas like one door, I knew what was probably going to happen pretty much every day. I knew how I needed to speak in order to keep the peace. I knew that from time to time I might get hurt, but I also knew how to kind of minimize it by that point. I thought I knew how to minimize it by that point. And then on the other side, it's like you go through that door, and I had no idea because I felt by that point so worthless. I felt like I would never find another relationship because he told me all these things, right? He was like, you know, whatever, I'm not going to say them because, you know, I don't believe that about myself anymore. But, you know, there were all of these, you're never going to find anyone else kind of thing. Like, you are so lucky to be with me. Like, I could have anyone that I wanted, but I'm, you know, like choosing you sort of thing. And so anyway, so I got to the point where I decided to go through that door where I had no idea. And the only reason I went through that door was because I was afraid that if I didn't, I wouldn't live to see my 30th birthday. It had gotten that bad.
Wow.
Yeah. And, you know, there was one incident where it was like his friend had come over and I don't know, I had done something that upset things and he started chasing me around the backyard. And anyway, it just got really strange and his friend just left.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. Like that's kind of showing me that this isn't normal. And because I had gotten into this point where I was like, everything just felt normal because that was the life I was living.
Yeah.
And I would look for ways to make it seem normal. Like I'd never told a soul about what was going on. But I'd always look at other people's relationships, be like, oh, you know, like they had a fight. So maybe like our fights, even though they look a bit different, maybe it's normal.
Yeah.
So just gotten into this like completely delusional kind of.
This is okay.
This is okay. Yeah.
Until it's not.
Until it's not.
Yeah.
So then I made the decision, to leave, and I walked away from everything. House that I'd been living in with him, which was all in his name, but I'd been living there for a good 3 years, and you know, took 2 bags of clothes, my car, and a whole lot of what I love to refer to as sexually transmitted debt.
I haven't heard that for a while.
No, yeah, okay. And then, so walked away with nothing really, like with not much, but I had my life. Yeah. You know?
It's like, basically sounds like that was the moment where it's, you've obviously made a big decision there and not necessarily that you'd shifted the mindset completely, but you'd gone from, I'm not worthless, I'm worth something though.
I guess maybe, yeah. I guess certainly consciously I hadn't, but I think it was just more out of fear by that point, and it was just, you know, I had to just do something. But you know, coming back to like your original question, I went down a tangent. I apologise, but you were asking like about some of the behaviours, and you know, I feel like it's really typical that you hear things like, you know, as you say, like it started off really good in the beginning, and then I was in too deep, but it didn't really start off all that good in the beginning.
Yeah.
And a lot of other things that I tend to hear is like, oh, you know, but he's sorry, and he says that he's sorry. He never once said sorry to me, which is, I find that so interesting as well. And and how interesting that I was just okay to just continue, you know, sort of living like that.
Almost seeing like the potential best in what he could be and hoping for that.
Yeah.
It's like putting up with the shit to get to the shovel type thing.
And this was the thing, right? And it's funny because a lot of people in this sort of friendship group that I was in at the time, they were like, oh, you're so good for him, Karli. Like, we can see he's starting to change. No one ever knew what was going on. And I wore that as a badge of honour.
Yeah.
I was like, I can change him. No one else has been able to crack this nut, but I can.
Yeah.
And I guess, I kept trying because I saw him... not for a long time, but as the years went on, like probably the last couple of years, I saw him as this wounded little boy. As I started to learn more about his family and the environment that he'd grown up in, I started to like develop more empathy for him.
Yeah.
And I excused a lot. And there's no excuse for that behaviour, obviously, as we know, but I think I just got blinded by that when I saw him in his vulnerable moments, which were few and far between. I did sort of start to really see this like wounded little boy, and I felt really sorry for him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's interesting that because without knowing the guy or anything like that, it becomes that victim mentality, doesn't it? Of, you know, whether he's aware of everything that's happened and how that's influenced him or not, but it's very the world's at fault.
100%.
Karli, you're at fault.
Oh my
I'm
God,
not
yes.
at fault. I can't take any accountability or responsibility because everything's happening to me.
100%, exactly right. And that was how he lived his life. That was how he operated in jobs that he did with his mum, with his dad, with me, with friendships and things that would happen, right? Everything, when we'd go out and someone would get an order wrong, you know, for like a meal or a coffee, like everything was always somebody else's fault, and he never took accountability. And it took me a long time to realize, like, oh my God, he never once said sorry.
Yeah.
Until the very end when he realized she might actually leave. And what I now realize was that, you know, he was, again, I'm not excusing any of the behavior, but he was completely acting out of fear because he was so afraid of being abandoned. So he would do whatever he felt he needed to do, say whatever, to make me feel like, who am I to leave this guy?
Yeah.
And he even did say to me in the very end, when he realised finally that I was serious, I was in Sydney because my boss sent me there just to, you know, because I felt a bit unsafe after, like, directly after leaving. You know, they say that that's the most vulnerable time for someone who's leaving an environment like that. So my boss sent me to Sydney. I remember he rang me and he's like, so after Sydney, like, you're coming back? I'm like, no, I'm not coming back. And finally it hit, and he cried and he said, but my worst fear has come true. I've loved and I've lost.
Yeah.
Right. So that was his, like, biggest fear, was being abandoned. And, you know, all this stuff had happened with his dad over his childhood. And I guess that sort of helped me kind of, how am I trying to say this? Helped me understand that it wasn't about me.
Yeah.
So even hearing him say that was quite a healing moment, because I realized that it wasn't about me. The other thing that was a healing moment, in a way, was that he had said that he purposely manipulated me. Right.
Okay.
So he said to me again at the end, he was like, look, I knew that I could mold you into whatever. This is going to sound weird when I'm saying this is a healing moment, but hear me out. I knew I could mold you into whoever I wanted you to be. When I met him, I was brunette, I was chubby, a bit overweight, I wasn't going to the gym. By the time I left, I was skinny, I was blonde, I was training at the gym. You know, I was a completely different person. And he'd completely molded me into who he wanted me to be.
Yeah.
And so he said to me, like, I knew exactly what I was doing this whole time. Like, I completely manipulated you. He actually said those words, and I was like, oh, okay, like, that's kind of cool. But now that I'm free of you, I get to be whoever I want. Which that was the healing aspect of it, if that.
Yeah, of course. It's almost that feeling of I can do what I want and I'm not going to get in trouble now. Like.
Exactly right. So I'd been living like this whole existence, which was not me, completely inauthentically me. And, you know, as I said, I'd never told one single person the whole time. And, you know, I'd sometimes rock up to work late, and I, you know, would have like, I'd be bleeding or something, be like, oh, what happened to you? Oh, I slipped in the shower, like, how silly of me. And, you know, like, oh, where'd you get that bruise from, Karli? Like, oh, playing basketball on the weekend. And, you know, I was always, it sounds horrible, but I was lying. Because I felt like I had to protect myself, because I was so scared that if someone found out, that then my life would completely change. Yeah. Which obviously it needed to, but I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah, it wasn't going to change in a safe way as well.
It didn't feel like that. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot, isn't it?
It was a journey.
And it's crazy once you've been in and out of dynamics with certain people like that, how prevalent you can see it around, you know, the narcissism, the emotional manipulation, the guilt trips. And, how do you navigate that sort of stuff in your daily life now? Because, I mean, you know, people well-meaningly will do that sort of thing sometimes. And, you know, it's easy to go, oh, shit, I'm triggered, jump in. But how do you sort of...
Yeah, good question. How do I navigate that in my life now? I don't know. Like, I think there's still this part of me that wants to see the best in people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But I also, I feel like I can spot red flags, for lack of a better term. I can spot those, you know, quite a bit easier than what I would have before. And at the same time, I also need to check myself and make sure that it's not just like, you know, is that your wound kind of speaking there, Karli?
Yeah, you projecting,
or is that
is
projecting? That's it.
Yeah.
Or is this legitimate? So that's still probably a bit of a work in progress for me, to be honest. But I think the awareness is key. Yeah. And that, like, not all perceived red flags are actual real red flags.
Yeah, I see what you mean there. Like, I mean, you know, it depends on your mentality and the subjectiveness of the situation as well.
Of course, yeah.
You know, it's like when, like, we're all going to get angry at some point, but it's how does that anger show? You know, and what about that behaviour is good or bad, green flag, red flag sort of.
Exactly, because showing our emotions and allowing those emotions to come out is healthy. But it's how we allow them to come out.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
So there is so much benefit in letting your anger out, but in hurting another person, like, maybe not. You know what I mean? So it all depends on the situation. But
it does, absolutely. So, you know, going down that kind of path a bit, I guess, you know, red flags are pretty, I don't want to say common or easy to identify, but what about some of the green flags? You know, whether that's not only just romantic partners, but men in general, say, or you know, even just general relationships you have. What are you looking for in people where you know, okay, I'm in alignment with that person?
That's a really good question. I think a person or a man who is prepared to be vulnerable in some sort of way is very powerful, and it certainly helps me feel safe. You know, you get a feeling of safety around people. It's going to sound woo, but, you know, there's an energy of feeling safe around people. I'm very big on reading people's energy and kind of like determining whether or not I can feel safe in their presence. But obviously that doesn't just happen the moment you meet somebody, right? There's conversations and, you know, things that happen. But yeah, I would say, like, vulnerability is something that is an absolute green flag for me. But then also, like, that line between this is me being vulnerable compared to, like, this is me just spewing all of my emotions on you and, like, dumping it on you so that you've got to carry it around and deal with it too. Right? So yeah, I'd say that's probably one of my biggest green flags is vulnerability, transparency, like willingness to have big conversations in whatever capacity. Like whether it's in a relationship and you're needing to share something together, right? Like being willing to have big conversations and being able to do it in a healthy way. And that's really important. And same with friendships. Yeah. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, I think, especially when you do the work on yourself and you go deeper, you can identify the difference between the friendships you have in your life as it is already, you know. And like I look at, you know, not all, because I've still got some great mates from the days when I was out at the pubs drinking and stuff, but like, you know, some of those guys who I was mates with where it was just for the sake of the activity, versus, like you say, going down to the beach on a Saturday morning, catching up with whoever's there, and having this beautiful, deep conversation about whatever.
It's being safe to be who you are, and knowing you're not going to get judged.
No, it's super important, I think, and, you know, I've been a big advocate for vulnerability for a long time, and I think men are getting better at that. And us women, we've got a bit of a job to do to show men that it's safe and that it's okay for them to be vulnerable too. And even something that men can learn from women as well is the ways in which they showcase their vulnerability as well. You know, I saw a really interesting example on social media the other day, which was like a screenshot of a Snapchat that like a 32-year-old bloke had sent, which was very ambiguous. It was like, you know, I guess this year it must be the same. And the poster was a female who was quite critical of him, like, you know, this is a 32-year-old grown man doing this. Maybe this is the only way he knows to reach out.
Absolutely.
You know, maybe he's trying, and it's the yin and the yang, isn't it? Like, it's trying to come to the fore with this. Can you meet me here and allow that to happen as well?
Completely, right? And I think there's been I think there's starting to be a bit of a shift in women becoming more accepting, or showing men, that it's acceptable for them to be vulnerable and be able to share as well. But, you know, historically, like what we've seen, it's like, you know, don't be a pussy or things like that. Do you know what I mean? And I think, like, we've got work to do to shift that and to show men that they're safe to be vulnerable to be able to express, and also men having their own communities as well with their brothers, you know, that they can, you know, express in different ways too. But the other thing that I would say would be a green flag for me as well is when someone's words and actions align.
Yes, yeah.
That's one of the ultimate green flags.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, you know, that's something I will admit, when I was younger, I struggled with quite a bit was like, okay, we're going to go out this evening, or, you know, something like that. It's, sorry, I feel like doing this instead. You know, there's certainly something I'm a lot more aware of now than I do, but you want to be able to trust people. And I 100%. Think that's universal. I don't, you know, I think that's certainly, like you say, a great green flag to have, and I think it goes both ways.
Totally.
For sure.
Yeah. Completely agree.
You know, especially when we're talking about that vulnerability piece, it's not only am I like, well, a man coming to a woman, trusting them that I'm going to be, you know, supported in that time, but it's also like it's the safety, it's what I'm saying is going to be accepted, it's not going to be dispersed everywhere, it's that whole piece.
Completely agree.
Yeah. There you go. So I know we talked a bit about your business before, but I thought you should actually probably plug the name. That might help. I just realised that. I'm thinking, shit.
That's all right. We've talked about a lot, haven't we? Did I talk about business? Yeah, I did. No, I did.
Yeah. So what's the name of your business, and in a nutshell, what are you offering to people?
So I just operate. If you find me on Instagram, at Manifestation Mentor Karli. I'll send that to you. You can tag me or whatever. That's where I operate my business. So it's just it's like Karli Whitwell coaching. I have a podcast as well, which is called Thrive, which I love. But my business is mainly around supporting coaches in creating and selling out their programs. So I tend to help a lot of coaches who have worked one-to-one with a lot of clients, and they do a lot of once-off sessions, and they get to this point where they're like, oh my God, you know, I want to scale my business and make more money and help more people, but I can't possibly fit more people on my calendar, right? So they're sort of still in that like business model of literally trading their time for money. So I help them create scalable coaching programs where they can serve in, say, 1 hour where they would have normally helped and worked with one person, they work with 10 or 20 or however many they want.
Yeah, wow.
Right, so I help them create the programs because I've got all this, you know, this experience from my corporate world, being national trainer, coach, and that sort of thing. One of the big pieces of what we did was create these programs that solved a problem, right? So I help them create their programs, and then I help them sell their programs as well, which is a huge piece. So that's all around, you know, the content, the messaging, how we're actually speaking about our offer. You know, are we speaking with conviction and certainty? Do we know that we can actually help these people? Because if we don't, then no one else is going to feel certain in that either, right? So it's about all of that. I guess it's about finding your magic, and then being able to translate that genius and that superpower that you can help people one-to-one, being able to translate that in a one-to-many model. So that, you know, you can clock off at 2:00 and go to Trav's house to do an ice bath and a podcast, and you're not feeling chained to your calendar.
That's what we like.
That's what we like, right? And I actually only recorded an episode on my own podcast today about like creating the lifestyle. And we get to actually do that intentionally. We've got to be very mindful, you know, of what we want to create and how we want to create it. So that's what I do. And my signature program is 8 weeks. It's called Clients, Confidence and Cash, because we're calling in the clients, we're doing it in a confident way, and we're creating more cash.
Make 'em bank.
Make 'em bank. Which is 8 weeks to create and sell out your program, magnetize your dream clients, double your income, and 10x your impact. So that's my program, and that's my passion. I love it so much.
I can tell you light up when you talk about it. It's great to
I know. Yeah.
And so, you know, obviously you've helped a lot of people so far. Is there any intake at the moment? Any accepting clients at the moment?
Always. Always. So the way that I've structured the program, again, which, you know, it's about me creating the lifestyle that I want, is that people can join at any time. Okay, so they can join at any time. There's no start and finish date as such. The material or the content for the program is all pre-recorded, but they come in and they get 8 weeks direct support with me.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so
So they're
via
doing
Zoom.
the other content at their own pace, sort of
Self-paced,
thing,
yeah.
and you're there with everything else. Yeah.
Exactly. And so we've got this rolling community. You know, people are coming in, or they might be then going out and then elevating into another program, which might be a one-to-one with me, or it might be something else. So it's this like rolling intake, which I found to be really powerful.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah. So we're always having new people join.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. So if you are a coach who's looking to take their business to the next level and, you know, looking to get more out of their time and get that lifestyle they want, definitely get in touch with Karli, and all of her details will be in the show notes below as well.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think we've certainly covered a fair bit today. Yeah,
so much.
This is the longest one I've done for sure. And, you know,
your girl can talk.
Oh, look, so can I. I think we said we could do this for about 5 hours. Actually.
I know. Yeah, we could.
But it's that's the beauty of good friendships, isn't it?
I agree.
Yeah. So what's you know, we've talked obviously a fair bit about 2025, but what in general are you looking for this year? Like what's the big thing, or what's the, you know, one word mantra?
Yeah. So the one word for 2025 is amplify.
Yeah.
And you know why? Because I loved 2024 so much.
Yeah.
I was like, want more of it.
Yeah.
So, you know, the connections, more conversations like this, right? More community, more love, more excitement, more fun. You know, it's just take what we did in 2024 and amplify it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, nothing more grand than that. You know, it's just like, I love 2024 so much. I want to do it again, plus a little bit more.
Yeah, more of this.
Yeah.
More growth and more, you know, you get to see your daughter grow another year as well.
Exactly. Which is, you know, I think it's a really nice feeling, because I'm feeling a lot more grounded as I come into this year than I have over the past few years. So it's like, I don't want big changes as such. I just want to keep doing what I've been doing, which is actually a really nice feeling.
Yeah. No, and that's amazing. It's such a good feeling when you get to that contentment of, cool. Like,
yeah, we're creating a pretty special life. So
I'm in a beautiful spot on my journey.
Yeah, exactly.
One I did want to ask, which I probably should have asked you earlier, but you mentioned that Layla was a bit of a mirror for you. What's been the funniest or maybe the most confronting thing that you've gone, oh yeah, that is me?
Okay. So when she will say, so every now and then, like, sometimes as a parent, I'm out of ideas.
Yeah.
I need you to get away from the screen and go to bed, and I don't know how else to do it. So I count. I might go like, if you don't get hit by the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, right? And so she started counting when she wants me to do something for her. She's like, Mum, I told you to go and get this for me. 1, 2. How can I tell her to stop?
Yeah.
She's just modelling. So I need to get more creative and better in my negotiation skills.
Yeah, so Mum, if you expect me to do this.
I know, and I can't possibly say to her, don't you dare count, like, you know, that's for the parent.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's very funny, and I'm sitting there and I try not to laugh, and yeah, but she's incredible. She's amazing. Yeah, she's super sassy and just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I love her so much, and I'm going to go pick her up soon and enjoy the evening with her.
Really nice and energized after the ice bath.
Absolutely.
So you'll be able to muck around with her.
Might head to the beach.
I thought that might be on the cards.
Yeah.
Just about every day that is for you, isn't it?
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, every day possible, yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I won't keep you for too much longer, but the final question that I ask everyone is, you know, everyone knows who follows me on socials how much I love my quotes.
Yeah.
What is a quote that really resonates with you, or, you know?
Good question. Let me tune into what I'm feeling here right now. I feel like this is not like a quote by someone. This is a quote a la Karli.
Yeah. Quote unquote Karli Whitwell.
But there are people in the world who need you to be who you are and to share from your heart, because they need, like, whatever it is that you've got to say, right? So I think that the more we can kind of tap into ourselves and who we are and live from that more authentic heart space, the greater the impact that we're going to have on somebody. And you just don't know the impact that you being you can actually have on somebody, and what that can inspire them to do, or even almost give them permission to do. Not that anyone needs permission, but, you know, I think the more that we act in alignment with who we are and our values, the more we're giving people permission to do the same thing. And I think what an amazing world if we're all, you know, acting from that place.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's really, really beautiful. And it's also getting out of your own way in that way as well, and going, you know, there's a lot of, I guess, imposter syndrome when it comes to that, isn't there? Where it's like, you know, who am I to say this or put this out there?
Yeah.
Who am I to not?
Absolutely.
You know, like, as you say, you never know who's going to need this. Like,
absolutely.
You know, there might be 99 people out of 100 that don't listen to this podcast, don't care about what we have to say or anything like that, but there might be one person.
Exactly.
If you get to make a difference for that one person just from living in that authentic, this is who I am, this is what I have to say, that's a beautiful spot to come from.
I completely agree. And one thing I always say to people when they say like, oh, but I'm scared to say this thing or do this thing. Like if you're, like you need to zoom out because you're making it way too much about you. Right? Whereas if you've got a message that's on your heart, like it's there for a reason. It's not there for you to just, you know, try and pretend that it's not there. Like you've got to zoom out and think about who needs to hear that message.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Well, I better let you get to your daughter and get back to your week. But thank you so much for coming on. It's been awesome to have a chat.
Thank you.
I think we'll certainly have to have you on again in a few months and see how the year's going.
Oh, thank you.
Might try and have to convince you to get in the winter. We'll see how we go.
My legs are only just defrosting, I think, now. So we'll
just change his phone number and whose phone? Who it is?
Sorry, I don't have you saved. No, it would be my pleasure. Thank you.
Excellent. And as I said earlier as well, I will put all of Karli's details in the show notes if you want to connect with her and get involved with her program or just follow the awesome content she puts out as well.
Yay.
You can find me, obviously, wherever you're watching now. Also, the Journey of Trav on Instagram, Trav Dittmar on TikTok, Trav Dittmar on YouTube, and all the Spotify and Apple podcast pieces as well. But thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of the Cold Exposure Hot Topics podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Yay, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Cheers. G'day, legends. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Just a reminder for where to follow me on social media. I'm the Journey of Trav on Instagram, Trav Dittmar on YouTube, trav.dittmar on TikTok. And if you are listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please give me a 5-star rating and leave a review as well. That would go a long way to getting this podcast out there. And if you are watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, share, all of that good stuff as well. Thanks heaps, legends, and I'll see you next time.